So good afternoon. Today, the SAQ, Swiss Association for Quality, and Xelyo Belgium together represent 100 years of quality. And we are here to celebrate the 40 years of Xelyo Belgium and the 60 years of the SAQ in Switzerland. So my name is Prisca Zamaretti, and I'm the director of the SAQ, the Swiss Association for Quality, who is the Swiss cross-country umbrella association for quality and the leading provider of knowledge for expert community and education in Switzerland. And we are a trusted authority in personal certification. And we have a slogan which is fostering quality, innovation, and sustainability with certified standards across branches. And let me introduce now my colleague who is holding the 40 years of Xelyo. So Anne, please.
Thank you. I'm Anne Kind. I'm the director of Xelyo. And Xelyo is a Belgian network organization of members across all sectors that share the ambition to become better tomorrow than today by sharing insights and good practices with each other.
Oh, wait.
Sorry, it seems that my mic is actually muting on its own, so I need to learn to unmute actively. So instead of looking in the past, we decided for our 100 years to look toward the future. And we have prepared a series of 3 webinars. Today, you're going to see the first one about AI and quality. And on June 12th, we are going to propose you to talk about the EU Green Deal. And on the 25th of September, we are going to talk about the agile supply chain. In all 3 webinars, we will have experts introducing the topic and 1 business case per country. And I want to do a little service announcement on how we will proceed today and the other times too. So we will try to get all the questions at the end of the presentation, which will happen today. And now I give the word to Anne to present our first speaker.
Hi, we hope we have piqued your interest by now. So I would like to introduce our first speaker, Matthias Verlinde, lead data scientist at Cegeka. Matthias is a physicist with a PhD in nuclear physics. And at Cegeka, he combines his technical and communicational talents, working in a multidisciplinary team that is focused on data and AI. He will share with us the key insights on what we should know about AI in 2025. Matthias, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Anne, for the introduction. So let me share my screen. So the introduction was already done, so I will focus on the content. So I've been asked to kind of give a little bit of an outline of what AI is going to bring in 2025. So it's only 10 minutes, so I could be talking, of course, hours on this specific topic. So I'll try to be brief. So I've here already put on the slide. Of course, what's the next goal is the general intelligence. I think you've already heard about it in the news, in the media. It's an intelligence that can kind of rival our own as a human. I think I don't surprise anyone by saying we're not there yet. And the way towards that is still unclear. I think anyone who says they know exactly how to get there is not really talking realistically. So I put some clouds there. So is this going to be 2025? I doubt it. It's not going to be in 10 years. I expect sooner, but so what is there? That's a bit cloudy. So I want to focus a bit more on the short-term part. So that's why we focus not on the North Star, but everything else related to the polar bear. So the first topic for me is a bit, all these numbers. I think you already noticed it. Microsoft, all the big tech players, Google, Amazon, and so on, even the US government, they're pouring amounts of money that I don't think are ever precedented. And for me, it sounds a little bit like a new Manhattan Project, a privately funded one, but where inconceivable amounts of money combined with the greatest minds of our time. And the greatest minds, you can take that literally. The 2 Nobel Prize winners of physics and chemistry were all let's say, AI-related people, right? So if you combine a lot of money with the greatest mind of our time, well, I can assure you that there will be, of course, very much new topics coming out, advancements that go way faster than you would expect. A bit the sky is the limit. So I think that's, I'd say, a guarantee that the rapid race of the progress that we see today will not just stop or will not reach its peak anytime soon. So for me, what is the takeaway for quality management based on that is, of course, the progress will not slow down, and it's an almost impossible task for someone who is not full-time busy with AI and following up to try and follow this progress. But it will be moving at an unprecedented rate, and you as quality managers, like I will point out in the end, will have a very important role in the rollout of all these applications. So it's the best you can do to remain aware of what technology or what the level of technology is today, what is possible and what is not possible yet is going to be very important to follow up on the advancements in the way that is, of course, possible and feasible, right? The next part for me is the open source versus closed source game. And this is something very unique about AI. You have closed source players, which means they have their AI models somewhere on servers, and you send them requests, and you don't know exactly what model is behind it, what is done with your data, and so on. So there are many question marks out there. And you have the open source game. And these are models that you, as a user, can simply download. You can host them yourself. You can do anything with them that you want, right? You have big companies behind the open source game. You have big companies behind the closed source game. There's, of course, also the geopolitical game. I think everyone in the news heard about the DeepSeek part, which is the DeepSeek is a Chinese company that open sourced everything, and they kind of disrupted the American big tech companies by showing that China is not that far away in the advancements of AI. And these kind of things just show that they open sourced everything, so you can use those models. But very importantly, for example, if you ask something about the Tiananmen Square drama that happened there, the model will not respond. So these things is something that I just want to emphasize. This closed versus open source game, the models are trained on things you don't know. So for me, as a quality manager as well, it remains important to remain aware of the pros and cons that I just talked about. These closed source models have their advantages in simplicity to use and so on, but there are disadvantages in how they were trained. Can you understand all the biases that are in there and what's not? And of course, ensure also the compliance with emerging regulations. If you know the EU AI Act and so on, that you know what they can be used for, what you should be aware of when using these models to make sure you use them in a responsible fashion. This is for sure not an easy exercise. Let me emphasize that the exercise is by far not simple, but it's something to stay aware of, especially as you can see that all the compliance regulations become very important, especially in this era. Next, for me, what is especially on the front of how to say this, on the technology front more, it's reasoning and agentic AI. Just to give you a little bit of an idea, what does it mean, reasoning AI? It's kind of the way that in the old days, you have the chess programs, that the first AI that was successful was, one of them was in chess. There was a computer program beating the best chess players. They often just predict the next move. That's how these language models of today also work. They predict the next word. But the chess algorithms got better by also planning ahead. Okay, so if I now use this move, what will the other opponent likely do? Okay, what should I do in response to that, and so on. And so this is kind of thinking ahead before you put out your first move. This is how we also, let's say, think and produce language. Hopefully, in most cases, when you are answering a question, you try to think ahead and then only put out the first word, right? Because you want to get somewhere with your answer, and that's how you kind of configure the word by word basis of your sentences. This is how these new AI models that are coming out and they're already being used at the moment, they are more of a reasoning basis. Right? They tend to spend longer on difficult problems than on easy problems, a little bit like we as humans do as well. So that's something that will move very quickly. Something that is very difficult at the moment, not very scalable yet, but that they are moving up very quickly. And this is really proving a lot of new grounds in complex tasks like mathematics and science and so on. Okay. The other part is on the top. You see the agentic AI. What is meant by agentic? It's kind of the hot buzzword in AI for 2025. It's that you use AI not only to just produce information or to gather information or whatever that you do with the large language models, but to also make them really do stuff. So that can be, I don't know, filling in a document, sending in an email or whatever, so that your AI can handle more and more complex tasks in an automated fashion, and not just producing text, but actually performing tasks for you in a specific business context and so on. What is the idea behind it is, of course, that's called the agency gap. The idea is that you can do much more proactive. You let it work in complex goals. It works more in an autonomous way, and it's less like an assistant to you, but can be really an autonomous, it's a difficult word, actor in a business process. All right. What is important for the quality managers in that aspect, in my opinion, it will automate more tasks, and that's going to be for sure. The problem is that these tasks can also become more sensitive ones. It can be a sensitive task being a sensitive discussion or a sensitive conclusion that has to be drawn, or a sensitive action. That's all it. So as a quality manager, it will be, for me, very important to be sure, or to implement methodologies to verify that these decisions are trustworthy, and that you have, if they are not trustworthy, you have a human in the loop which can interact or can intervene when necessary, that you have at, let's say, the guardrails in place to make sure that when something goes wrong, or before something goes wrong, a human can be called into the loop, or an expert in other essential. Okay, so that's one part. And for me, the final part is also again related to quality. This is something for me which is a bit holding back this agentic behavior. It will automate tasks, that's for sure, but do this in a 100% reliable and robust way, it's not easy. You see many agentic applications popping up that promise you the world and promise you the heavens, but I'm assuring you that to make these models act in a consistent way, I'll call it like that, to do 100 times exactly the same thing is not something very easy. And especially if you have in an industrial process where quality is essential, you have 100,000 times the same thing happening. Even if the quality of these agentic parts is 1%, or even below 1%, or below 0.01 or whatever, it still makes a lot of mistakes, right? And that's something that's going to be equally important if it's going to automate more tasks, is again, what is the quality? And to really experiment with these models, experiment with your workflows, experiment with these automation tasks, that you know very well the expected quality, and if that expected quality can be is acceptable in this specific space, right? For me, that's a little bit the conclusions that, or that's the outlook that I see for 2025. Like I said, the main goal is the artificial intelligence, and that's far on the horizon. But what do I mean by far? I don't know myself. So this is something that we'll see in the future. But I think the other parts are a bit more short term, especially the agentic reasoning part, which I produced here in the last. I think that if you take something away from this, is the one you should take away. Especially a lot of information in the media, a lot of information in other sources that is discussing that, and it's going to be, like I said in the beginning, it's going to happen fast. These billions of dollars will not produce nothing. It will go fast, and I think it's all of our task is a bit to stay aware and stay on top of this evolution and revolution, maybe a little bit. But I think that's the main thing that I want to talk about. And at the end, like mentioned, if there are any questions, happy to answer.
Just one question, as Carmelo Coppola speaking. What timeline do you see that this will become standard for companies, that they just have to have it? What are we talking about? Is this?
I think this is a very good question, and I think the timeline is now. Is starting now. I mean, have to have it in the sense that for specific use cases, not all of them. It's not that you can just simply do everything with AI, and that's very important to understand. Also, I mean, it's not just everywhere applicable, but for many use cases, these AI models are already good enough to really accelerate, or at least make specific processes a lot cheaper, or a lot scalable, or a lot faster. So I think it's let's say the responsibility of each company to at least look at what kind of processes, what pain points exist in our current organization, and is AI already aware and capable of say alleviating those pain points maybe. And I think many answers will be yes. And then it's, of course, a no-brainer to start, because maybe your competitor is already starting. There is already a lot available. So I think that's an important part, to really consider what the options are within your company, within your business context, to use AI and to already at least address them, to at least look at them.
Okay, thanks. And just one other question,
Can we ask you to, excuse me for interrupting, I think we would ask you to have the question at the end, because there will be other talks, and maybe there is some clarification also in the next talks, and we are gonna then maybe have this question in the end.
Okay.
Is it possible? If you should leave early, please leave us your question in the chat so that we can handle it and you can have it in the recording. And thank you so much, Matthias, for your presentation. And,
my pleasure. My pleasure.
I would like now to introduce you our second speaker for today. And our second speaker is going to present us an application of AI already in quality. And I would like to welcome Peter Pedross, who is the founder and CEO of PEDCO AG, and a board member of the Swiss Association for Quality. And he has over 30 years of experience in quality management and pioneering background in scaled agility and software excellence. So Peter exemplary blend cutting-edge technology with proven framework, and I'm sure he will share with us some of the experience and how AI can support the quality manager. And I must say, I already heard the talk in German a bit longer, and I'm really happy to hear you now in a shorter version in English. Thanks for being here with us.
Thanks for having me with you. It's a pleasure for me to talk in Belgium as well. I don't speak Flemish, but je parle français aussi. On peut parler en français, but this speech will be in English. So we heard a lot about AI now, and it's also about what does that mean today for quality? What can we do with it? And what you will hear today is a little bit some of application of AI, which we can do right as of today. SAQ already tried it out, what we did, and I will just showcase you a little bit what that means and what all the fuss about AI is. So without further ado, can you see my screen?
Perfect.
Yeah, okay, very well. And now you move to the other corner, so I'll move you back here. Yeah, okay. So quality in the age of AI. And if we talk about AI, we see that it's omnipresent. It's in the newspapers, it's wherever. And of course, I asked ChatGPT, why is that so omnipresent? And it said, well, the reason for the attention is the prospect of a fundamental and wide-ranging transformation that will bring efficiency, innovation, and improvement in the quality of life. So there are certain aspects of it which I would like to highlight. And one of them, for example, is that we have increasing efficiency. If you have seen that video of figure 1, which came out in May last year, you were stunned how this finally works. You can look up the YouTube video by yourself a later time, but they just came up with the second video of Helix 2 weeks ago, and it's amazing. These computers now work all together. So we see now that AI can complete tasks faster, more accurate, and even more cost effectively than humans. And this is leading to significant efficiency gains. And this applies to simple, repetitive tasks, as well as complex data analysis. So we have also new opportunities, new innovations we can think of, tasks and processes which we have never done before, which was unthinkable. And in a world of increasingly dominated by data, AI enables the meaningful processing. It's very good in detection of patterns, and a large amounts of data, which is very hard to process for people, is very easy for a computer or for AI systems. So it can solve very complex problems as well. And of course, if you have such a system in place, you will be faster than the others. The services you can provide are cheaper or faster delivered. So it's something that you really need to use as a competitive advantage. And then, of course, with that, you can improve the quality of life and the quality of your products. So if you hear about that, that sounds a little bit familiar, doesn't it? If you are trained in quality in the European Foundation for Quality, you heard about the Edward Deming's, his book Out of the Crisis. And what we talk here about is we want to have satisfied customers. We want to be, want to have a competitive advantage over our competitors. So we want to have a continuous improvement. We want to reduce our risks, and we want to have failures and learn from these failures. So we have got really product life cycles, and they're very efficient. And the standard question which we had in the last decades, what was it? Processes, quality management systems. And I just took here one example of a process from Brexit, so it's a fun. I can show that it's not a real process, and it's nowadays still reflecting what is happening in the world today. And what is typically what we hear from our customers or from companies is the time it takes to find an answer is perceived as far too long in our QMS. And what happens if that is the case? People start asking private friends, experts, the colleagues on the other desks. I heard from an automotive company that they have people that they rather check out YouTube videos than read instructions on the QMS. You can Google problems, look for a good hit, or nowadays you ask ChatGPT. And the reason behind that is that most users, the intended users, are struggling with using a quality management system. They're under time pressure. They are not there every day, so they lack the routine. They lack the patience for model navigation. Then you hire process coaches, but they don't know the QMS either, neither the managers. And sometimes the processes are just ugly, must say that as well. So nobody likes to read that as well. And so you need to know where to find the answer, and that is not helping the people. And there's only one role usually who really loves the QMS, and these are the responsibles for the quality management system. So if you talk with them, they say the time required to adjust and roll out the process is far too long as well. So we have quality management system, we do the right thing, but it's all time consuming. And now we are getting efficiency gains. And efficiency gains, how do we get it? With AI capabilities. I just sum up 3 possibles, and I will showcase it just in a second for that. There are some capabilities which we can use for quality management systems with AI. So for example, we could have a kind of AI companion. AI companion is like ChatGPT, but it's based on your personal quality management systems. And so it improves the access to your valuable content in the quality management system. And it's only based on your QMS. It shall not hallucinate. And then it comes up with follow-up questions and brings up backup links to the quality management system. If you want to roll out new processes and the roles change, the responsibilities change, you have to make sure that the people are trained in their role. So you want to have role-based questionnaires, and that takes time as well. That is something that AI can do very well. And the third area, which I would like to showcase, is to have compliance checked with AI. It's usually a very, very large task to have run to prepare for a process audit. And this can be done with AI now as well, even with an agentic solution. And you can verify that the process adherence is there as well in place. Now I would like to show you just some screenshots. I'm not going to do any demos here. or whatever, but these are real tools which are running nowadays. Even at SAQ, they're using it. So here's my mouse. Going back, a companion could look like that. What you usually have is you have a kind of question which you can ask in your own language. It will detect your language and answer in your language. Let me get the pointer here. You can ask in your own language, and it shall give a very short answer. Very short answer is important because it shouldn't be in concurrence to your quality management system. The truth is always in the quality management system. It's just like a friend or an expert. It gives you a little bit the hint. This is what it says. There's a summary. And if you want to look it up in details, you can click on these links and it will point you directly into the quality management system. Then this is something that really gives you an answer to your question, and you don't know, and you don't have to know where the information is residing in, how it's the way to get there. And it will also come up with some follow-up questions. Follow-up questions, we had one customer in Detroit, and they told us, hey, I used that as a self-learning platform. I joined the company, I started to ask my questions, I used these follow-up questions I didn't thought of even, and then I really learned how it is. And this is really important, that it gives you direct access to the information which is in your QMS and exclusively on your QMS. This is important so that we don't have any hallucinations. A companion tool should be built in a way that we have only those answers which are addressed in the quality management system. If you ask an abbreviation which is not existing, it will tell you, I don't know that. So this is a system with no external interaction out of the QMS box. And we had some companies in Germany that told us that they saved 25% of the cost for the process coaches with such a system. Of course, it's there 24 hours, 7 days a week. This is how it looks like on one screen. You can put them aside, so you have really a personal companion for your quality management system. It's just an example of how that could look like. Usually people have 2 screens nowadays, then it's even better. Then the role-based training, if you have a process, you can generate out of your process description some questionnaires talking about what is needed to understand your role. And this can be generated by AI as well. This is, for me right now, the hardest task which we can do in AI, because it would involve also the people certifications, people authentication. So we are in a people business here, and this is pretty tough. The third thing which I would like to show is a tool which we have built, which is called Audit Pro. And what it does is it takes standards, regulations which are imposed on your company, on your processes, and builds up a hierarchical understanding of your regulations which are imposed on you, and compares it to your quality management system. So it conducts an audit of your quality management system. So you really get that information. How is it doing? And this is something that shall be done in an iterative manner. So you will get the answers of how well are we doing? Where are some points to improve? And then we have these agentic solutions as well. So it will come up even with recommendations of what shall I do in my QMS based on all the context of the regulations and my QMS, and how can I improve that, where to improve that. And this is done with this agentic solution. We have 9 agents in place right now. So this, what Matthias said, is already in place and used. SAQ made an article on their usage of this Audit Pro, and it has been published last week as well. Good. So if you have all those things in place, what does that really mean for our daily work? What can we do with it? So what we will have is continuous improvement, and that means we get faster. We have an acceleration with AI, and we have to deal with that. So how do we deal with that? We have to do more flow, and it's usually tending towards lean as well. Lean principles are very well known, so this is something that you can look up. And of course, there would be a very nice video, but we don't have the time to look at the video. In short, 1998, a typical wheel change on Formula One took like 18 seconds, and it's now at below 2 seconds, 1.6 seconds, something like that. So factor 10, just by learning how to do these steps and improving. So it's more important than ever with AI, because there will be differences. Those who use AI and those who don't. And those who use, they are much faster. So it's a starting point for plan, do, check, act from Deming. We are still there, better agile, offering better, faster products, because we get feedback very fast, and we replace projects with products. We can't wait 1 year to found a certain feature. We have to do that on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, and there are new approaches to do that as well, like agile approaches, Scrum of Scrums, Spotify model, scaled agile framework, and so forth. Then when we do that, we learn more, we get more feedback, and we have higher innovation rate. And of course, it's about we learn from the operation and not from the development. So it's OpStep. Who raise up the hand? Who heard about OpStep? It's really important that we do that, because that delivers faster decisions and better decisions, because they're fact-based. And that is a typical picture which we see, that in the past we had our waterfallish approach. I know it's not always waterfallish, but that's kind of how it is always described in the quality management system. So we have the requirements, we design something, we implement, we verify, and then we do the compliance things as well. And now we can rather focus on principles. There are some examples from SAFe, and what they're saying, hey, you shall develop in an incremental way. And develop means you also put that into production. So people are already using your products and give you verified feedback, because they are using your products. And this is really something that you use all the time. So you come up after certain months with a new product. It is a product, it is used by customers, it's certified and everything. So for that, you need to have kind of principles. And from SAFe, there are some principles which really apply for that. For example, number 3, assume variability, preserve options. Not everything has to be decided on the first throw. Build incremental with fast integrated learning cycles. Base milestones on objective evaluation of working systems, because you deliver those systems. And then decentralized decision making. Get rid of the hierarchies which are taking decisions. So you have to apply that and change your process, that you can deal with this kind of new things. So at the beginning, I said there's a storm coming, and we can already hear the thunder. And there are some aspects of an acceleration which we have. So because of AI, what will change? New governance. Your governance model must be refreshed. What kind of meetings do we have? What is the composition? How do we control things? We will have new roles, and they have to replace existing roles, not just add on new roles. And there will be new ways of working together. And that kind of process, how we work, is part of the daily work. And they must be adopted very fast, because you learn fast. So think about yourself. How many times do you change your quality management system a year? 10 times? 50 times? 1 time? I see companies which do it every 3 years. they are not up to date. They're not up to their tasks. So the change takes daily place based on facts. And we will have continuous compliance. There are new models coming up. We don't have the time to go into details, but automotive comes up now with continuous and homologation, so that they can build changes on a daily basis, update over the air, and get that homologated as well. Rules and regulations, they are published in a rapid manner nowadays. We heard about these AI rules, and there will be new rules, and they have to be taken into consideration as well. There's less management, more involvement of the people, of the knowledge people, that they do their decisions. You need to take much more, have much more expertise to do your work. And of course, you have to welcome a failure culture. So mistakes are made, accepted, and you have to learn from. If we have that, we can be as fast, as successful as any organizations which we know in the market. And I name here first Chinese market and companies, because they're extremely fast and iterative and continuously improving. Xiaomi, Yangwang, Tesla, SpaceX, Google, BOD, Facebook, Amazon, Uber, Microsoft. We still have 40 seconds left. You may have heard, which company builds the fastest car for the Nürburgring in Germany, the famous Nürburgring? It was always Europeans, Ferrari, in the last 30 years, Porsche. And now, a new company founded 3 years ago comes to Nürburgring with their young one, an SU9, beats the record on their first attempt on a wet day. Amazing. And this is possible. So the speed of innovation determines the success over the others. There are a lot of books to read. You got the slide deck as well, about AI, about how to use it. There are several blogs around as well. One of the books I like is from Elon Musk. You can think whatever you think about Elon Musk. I wrote both autobiographies, but what is really cool is half of the book is about product development and lean development. Thank you, and now I hand over to Priska and Anna again.
Thank you, Peter. And Annie's taking over right now.
Yes.
Yeah, my mic did the same, the automatic switch off. But anyway, thank you very much. I'm sure you have challenged many people in the audience, but we will still keep the questions for the end. So I already look forward to the final part. But first, we will listen to the Belgian use case from Arcellor Mittal, presented by Tim de Grave, tech lead and AI specialist. And throughout his career, Tim has taken up several roles in different business units, and he has been consistently intrigued by new technologies. Specializing in AI technologies, Tim serves as the tech lead for multiple technological initiatives, driving innovation and efficiency within the company. He will share his insights through several good practices. Tim, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Anne. I guess everyone can see my screen. I think that's a yes. Okay. First of all, I'm very happy that Peter and Matthias already shared their visions on artificial intelligence, because what I'm going to show you today perfectly builds on top of that. I can agree as well from our point of view that the time to act on artificial intelligence is really right now. So things are evolving very rapidly. Also the content, I think, of my presentation. This moment last year, when we discussed on a possible presentation for Xelyo in November, we were only exploring and doing some tests on what we could do with Gen AI. A couple of months later, we were trying to get an idea of the full potential, and now AI has really become one of the foundations, one of the keystones of our strategy of our company. And also my role in this has evolved, I would say, equally as fast. So a couple of months ago, we brought a message to our top management on artificial intelligence. And the result of that message is an exercise that I'm doing right now, and that is constructing an ambitious roadmap for the company in order to keep up with or stay ahead of the competition. So I think that's perfectly in line with what was mentioned before. So I would like to share you the message that we brought to our management. And the question is, of course, are we prepared? I think it's an obvious question. It's a question that maybe many of you are asking as well. So I would say let's take off. So what I'm showing you here is no surprise. It's a simplified representation of the economic outputs per person throughout history. And what we see is that in the past, there have been inventions of generalistic technology that had led to, let's say, a significant increase in productivity. We can identify the Industrial Revolution with the steam engine, a bit later electricity. Quite recently, we had the computer and generally available internet for everyone. I think right now, probably everyone agrees on the fact that artificial intelligence will do exactly the same thing, but probably much, much faster than before. So when we look at the evolutions of new Gen AI models that come out, there are lots of benchmarks that measure their performance. But one of the most common benchmarks is the GPQA, and that's an exam on PhD level science questions. So what you see here is that every dot represents a new model. And it's only models, I think, that came out before, I think it was somewhere November last year. So the most recent models are not even shown here. And what you see is that only in a year and a half, we went from random guessing on that exam to really exceeding human performance. So it's not only going very, very fast, but you can also see that the progress here is not linear. You can see a start of a kind of an exponential progress. Of course, this will not go over 100%, of course, but there are other benchmarks showing quite similar things. Since a couple of days, I think it's not only something for the pro users of ChatGPT, of OpenAI, having to pay $200 per month, but I think that nowadays also Plus users have access to OpenAI's latest feature. It's called Deep Research. I don't know how many of you tried it, but if you did, I think you probably agree that the results of this are quite impressive. So if you don't know what it is, it's like in ChatGPT, currently there is a reason button in there. So this is a bit the same thing, but it can reason better for a longer period. And also the model can autonomously search the internet for relevant information to answer your question. So it's really, really good. And literally when you use this, you get the feeling that you have access to virtually any specialists. Also, of course, at, I would say, a fraction of the costs and also a fraction of the time it would usually take to get an answer from a specialist. Sam Altman, the person we see here, CEO of OpenAI, he said in an interview that he believes that the deep research can already do a certain proportion of all economic interesting tasks, and we believe the same thing. We have tried a few things out, actually more than a few things, not only with deep research. So I think it's not just something taken out of the air. I think there is really a ground truth in what he is saying here. I have some notes to keep up with my presentation. Next thing I want to show you, and it's also something that was important that we brought to our management. It's the fact that classic machine learning, because we always talk about AI models like ChatGPT, but you still have classic machine learning to produce specific models. I think that is here to stay as well. But what we see is that more and more cases that would require building specific models in the past, they can now be solved, at least to a certain extent, with those general purpose models. It's a trend that we think that will continue, and the big benefit, of course, as you can probably guess it, it's timing and cost. Not only can you build solutions much faster using a general purpose model, it's also going to cost you much less in terms of total cost of ownership. Now myself, I think I'm not sure if you can see the video. It's without sound, so no no issue if you cannot see it. But this video is a video that is entirely created by an AI model. I think only very recently, a couple of days ago. So me myself personally, I have a bit of a background in programming. And nowadays, I'm still coding a little bit. I'm doing some proof of concepts. And actually, I can say that the evolution in programming assisted by artificial intelligence, it's maybe even faster than what we have seen on the benchmark of GPQA. So I'm really convinced that by the end of this year, or by the latest, maybe the end of next year, the job of a programmer will be completely different. We will see significant reduction in the time it takes to make software. So the game again that you saw on the right-hand side was just created with a single instruction, producing thousands of lines of code, and it works. Not going to say that this will do magic for virtually any application that you build in your organization. It's not going to be like this, but you really get an idea here on the evolution that we are going through in terms of programming, in terms of creating software as well. That brings us to the following graphic. I think it's a bit small maybe to read, so I'm going to try to explain. What you see here is the evolution of all human cognitive tasks. So tasks that we do with our sensing, with our brain. And the white part at the top is the part that's currently we think we cannot automate for several reasons. And most of the time, the reasons are either we are technically not there yet, or artificial intelligence is not accurate enough to provide us with a good solution. On the other hand, we have the color part at the bottom, and there we see two zones. We have the gray zone, and the gray zone is the area that in theory we could do, but it's not economically interesting to do. Think, for example, about a task that you do one time per month, and this one time per month is costing you 1 hour each time. But if you spend like 50 days on software to automate this, it's not something that you're going to do. So the most interesting part, of course, here is this blue area, and there we really believe that we are going to see a very fast expansion of this blue area. So not only is it going to reduce the white part, because the models are getting much better, very fast. Also because the cost of software development is going down, because of AI-assisted programming. We will see that also the gray area is going down, and this creates kind of exponential, larger area of opportunities that you can automate. So in the end, what you will see is that probably within a few years, the majority of all cognitive tasks that we do as a human being can, in theory, be automated. Not going to say that it's going to be like this, that we are going to automate everything, but in theory, everything, or at least most of the tasks, we will be able to automate. It's a bit the same thing for physical tasks. I think I'm very glad that it was mentioned before. I think it was by you, Peter. But if you look at the evolution on humanoid robots, for example, figure 1 was mentioned before. Those humanoid robots, they work a bit in the same way that the large language models do. So they produce or predict next actions instead of next words. So they work in a similar way. So also there, in a couple of years, we will probably see an evolution of robots that are able to do a whole range of tasks just by giving them instructions. The only difference here in comparison to our cognitive tasks is that this is CapEx intensive. So here the area that is economically not interesting is obviously much larger and will probably remain larger for the next coming years. So in our strategy, we are going to keep an eye on this, but it's not going to be our, let's say, primary focus point. So what can you do now? First of all, I would say we should invest in what we call do-it-yourself AI. So remember the gray part on the previous slides. That's the part that is not interesting to automate from an economic point of view. Well, people can increase their productivity using tools, using a whole range of tools that are available for everyone. And that's something that you should really invest in. First example that I'm showing you here is, I think it was the topic of the initial presentation that we were giving in November. Chatbots, AI assistants, agents, whatever you would like to call them now or in the future. I think if they can work with your own company data, they will be one of the foundations for your whole AI strategy. And there are lots of use cases where you can use them and where you can significantly speed up work, ranging from example, let's say things like maybe first level support to maybe, as you see an example here, maybe even trying to reduce repair downtime and thus improving your reliability. I think a second good example of generalistic available tools is tools that turn text into speech. There are lots of things that we do every day that involves talking to people, making decisions together. But in the end, there is lots of administration that we have every day on doing something useful with things that we have discussed. And so there are tools available. I think Microsoft Teams has functionality if you have a paid Copilot license to turn automatically audio from a meeting into meeting notes. It's something that you should use if you have the license. But equally, I think you can think of solutions where you maybe record the audio of a physical meeting, turn it into a meeting report, or maybe use the same kind of technology when you do, for example, a safety talk on the shop floor. I think you will come up with lots and lots of examples that really improve people's productivity in their everyday tasks. Maybe this one is very obvious, but nevertheless, I think it's important. But it's using available models like ChatGPT already and training, especially the training part, training people in what they can do with it. We see that even people who use it intensively, most of the people, they are not using the full potential of what is possible. And that's simply because they are unaware of the capabilities, or they have not been, I don't know, inspired by somebody else who did it before them. And so it's really important that you provide a good training. And you can see there are lots of trainings on how to use ChatGPT available on the market. But in general, personally, I find most of the trainings are very, let's say, broad in the sense that they explain to you what you can do with it more in a generalistic way, but you never get concrete examples on how it can help you in your everyday job. And so, for example, what we are going to do in the next couple of weeks is every week overload people with very practical examples of what their colleagues did to enhance their productivity with tools like ChatGPT. So, second thing, and I'm glad, I think it was probably Matthias who mentioned this, but you should really start automating things. You have seen it on my chart before. There is a huge potential to automate, and there is a big chance that your competitors are doing this already. I think a first domain where automation can be done already and where lots of tasks can be automated is everything related to back office. And back office, I would say, is the perfect example. So everything where you can think about sales, commercial activities, procurement, all these kind of business domains, they have processes where you literally, let's say, process data yourself. And by processing data yourself, I mean you somehow receive or look at data, you do something with the data. That can be just interpreting the data, that can be transforming the data, that can be summarizing the data, whatever, and then inputting it in another system, making a report out of it. But that's a very generic concept, and I think that's a concept that is perfectly able to automate or semi-automate. Semi-automation, with that I mean, for example, also keeping a human in the loop in terms of, for example, for ethical reasons, for accuracy reasons, lots of reasons why you would like to have a human in the loop. But really starting to automate your administrative processes and tasks is, I think, really something that you should start doing. For the more industrial companies, there is also a huge opportunity, I think, in automating visual tasks. Basically, what we say is that every task that you do by judging, by looking at something, in theory, this is also something that can be done by an AI model. Here we are not always talking about models like ChatGPT with vision capabilities, but even there, GenAI is making such fast progress that it can also significantly reduce the cost and difficulty to implement such solutions. And so probably many industrial companies have cases where, for example, an operator is checking some things visually. It's a perfect case to start automating. Another domain where you probably might spend a lot of time, I would say, is in reporting. I think both in maybe more ad hoc reporting or in repetitive reporting like daily reporting or shift reports. There are lots of things that can be automated in case you are still doing manual work there. And it's not only the, let's say, the productivity gain there that is important, but it's also allowing you to be more coherent in how you bring or present the presentation. And there are some things that we currently look at in Arcellor Mittal to automate this daily reporting, and we really, sorry, it's a difficult word. We really see benefits not only in the time we spend on it, but really in improving how we visualize and how we bring the data in an automated way to our users. So last thing I would like to share with you is the fact that you should prepare, maybe not like we have presented here, like for a doomsday scenario, but really preparing by maybe shaping a vision where you want to go to in the near future. I think it's very important, and maybe the statements that you see here is not something that we are going to achieve this year or maybe next year, but we really believe that the statements that we put here are examples of things that can be achieved in probably a couple of years. They are realistic given the acceleration of artificial intelligence. So every project that you can do with artificial intelligence can be a stepstone towards realizing that vision. What I think is also important, and this is my very last slide, what is also important, I think, is identifying the potential. We were really not able to explain a couple of months ago how much potential we had in artificial intelligence, also not in GenAI. Not because we were unaware about, let's say, the capabilities of the technology, but simply because the people who had the knowledge on the technology were unaware of everything that was going on in people's everyday life. So it's really important to spend a lot of time on the analysis of how people work, try to make a chart, a map, an Excel file, whatever, on the potential, and prepare yourself for what is coming. In fact, I think one of the most important things that we are doing right now is in the potential that we are exploring or investigating, trying to identify, let's say, the ideas or projects that are near possible, meaning we have an idea on how to solve it, we can make a model or we can try it out, but we see, for example, that the accuracy to do something useful with it is just too low. Those are most often very valuable ideas. They are not ready yet, but maybe when a new model comes out in a couple of months, you will be able to do it. So that's, I think, something very important. And then the last point I put here on my slide is try to apply it in every business domain. So it's really not only in back office and administrative processing that you can use artificial intelligence to improve. Literally any domain we have seen lots and lots of examples where you can use AI. So that's it. I'm at the end of my presentation. So back to you, Anne.
And my mic is on now. Thank you very much, Tim, and thank you to all the speakers. We are coming now to with all my respect for the speakers, to the most exciting part of today, and that's the questions for the speakers, which I'm sure there will be. But before we start, I would like to ask Matthias if he can give a short reflection on the two cases that he has heard. What do you think?
Yes, let me open my mic. No, I think kind of resembles a little, represents a little bit my answer to the question that was asked quickly after my presentation. Is in the sense what what is the timeline? When should companies start doing stuff with AI? And I think well, the time is now, as the two speakers already mentioned. There's a lot of things that are already possible. A lot of things also that are not possible yet. I think Tim also nicely presented these cases where you say, okay, they are incredibly valuable but not feasible yet. It's simply good to assess those, to experiment with it, to define prototypes, experiments, to decide whether it's possible yet or still has to be put in the fridge. But the sheer act of experimenting is already very useful. You learn how to use it. You learn what the pitfalls are and so on. So I think that's the main message of today is start with it. Try to assess where it can bring value in a specific business context. Experiment with it. If it gives you reasonable value and it's already giving you performance as well, move it into the next phase and so on. Start to scale it. So that would be my major feedback. But I think very nice, interesting cases for sure.
Okay, thank you. So, into the audience, if you have a question, please raise your digital hand or put it in the chat. Both are good ways to get your question into the debate. Everybody's a bit timid, or I cannot imagine that all the consequences are clear. There, Fabio Siffert.
Yes,
Please,
exactly.
Fabio, if you can turn on your camera, that's more pleasant to interact.
Yes, of
Thank
course.
you very much.
So thank you very much for the presentations. Very interesting. I see it the same way, but I have one but. It's data protection. As we know, it's increasing all years. We need to do more, protect more. It's always getting more complicated to protect data. So how will AI and data protection at the end match? Because I don't really see the solution. I think that will be the problem at the end, not?
It's a question for the three speakers, I imagine.
Yes, yeah. Whoever will answer.
I have a question. Of course, we are working with highly regulated companies, and they have trade secrets to hide, and of course, all the kind of data which has been calculated with AI system must reside in their own systems. So we have dedicated systems for them which are running in their own country. Technically, it's mostly based on Microsoft Azure platforms. So we can run that in China, in Germany, in Switzerland, France as well, also in the United States, of course. And this is where the data resides in, and it's never leaving the companies. We have also some customers which have their own LLM, so it never leaves even their computer systems there. But this is only for very large companies which are able to do that right now.
Yeah, I can.
Matthias?
Yeah,
sorry, Fabio.
I can agree with what Peter said. It's a difficult thing, but nevertheless, there are some options to protect your data. If you're using cloud services, you can pick the vendors that really contractually guarantee you on the safety of your data. Also, maybe on where your data is processed, because from a European point of view, also that is important. And next to that, we have the benefit of being a large company, so we have the resources to build our own GPU clusters so that we can run LLMs locally. And for really critical things, this is something that we are currently exploring and probably also going to do.
Yep,
Okay.
I cannot agree more with what Tim and Peter just said. The options are there. Of course, it's something always to take into consideration. And maybe one thing I want to highlight that I often hear is kind of a misconception, especially in, I think, the assistants that Peter talked about. In many cases, these models you use are pre-trained models, are used models that are trained by someone else. You will not retrain them yourself, or you will not use your own data to retrain these models. Often you use the models and you have your data and you kind of combine them in an automated fashion to give context to the model. But it's never, I mean, almost in no cases you actually will train them yourself. And this as an example of, or people that came to me that were afraid that I have personal information in my database, for example, that I want my assistant anyway to be able to use. That's perfectly possible, because if that person wants to have his information removed as GDPR compliant and so on, because the model is never trained on that data, if that person's information is gone, the model also has no access to it anymore, in the sense that you cannot give that context anymore to the model. So this is, I mean, kind of just one example, because it's one out of many, but just to emphasize that I mean, there's also sometimes some misconceptions on what happens to the data that I provide, for example, in these assistants, just to give that a bit of a clarity.
Thank you very
Okay.
much. Fabio,
Thank you.
does that answer sufficiently your question?
I mean, okay, I see there are solutions. I think as a small company, there is a bigger challenge than big companies, but okay. I think we can face the challenges as well. And okay, then we will find solutions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, I notice a question from Michael Mertz, I think, who asks, the use of AI in the EU is regulated by the AI Act. Do you think it's a comprehensive law for regions like Switzerland and Belgium? How could the AI Act help small companies and QM expert to achieve better, more lean projects besides EU data regulations? I think that's many questions, but I think the focus, I think, is the impact and the use of the AI Act on business life in Belgium and Switzerland.
If I give my very honest opinion, is that the AI Act will not help you design or create better, more lean projects. It's the AI Act is more a way to, I mean, at the end of the day, it creates kind of a framework to decide what are you allowed to do with AI and what not. It's more kind of like a threshold saying these kind of use cases cannot be done, and these are the ones like racial profiling and these kind of things. And we're not going to do that in Europe, so that's out of the question. There are a few which are more like high risk, like for example in banking sectors, like risk assessment and these kind of credit risk models. They have to be regulated. So there you really need to go through a checklist. So I mean, everything related to the AI will not really help you design better. It will create a lot of overhead, but for some cases that's perfectly reasonable because they have high risk. But it's more like a risk assessment that you have to do for each case that you want to develop. If it's a more high risk, you will have to adhere to a lot of extra regulations and a lot of let's say overhead that accompanies it. But in my opinion, the majority of the cases, the impact will be extremely limited, and it will for sure not help you to design a better, more lean project. It's just kind of a risk assessment you need to do.
Yeah. Any of your two colleagues, Peter, Tim,
Yes.
do you have?
Yeah. It's hindering the development and innovation, these regulations, of course, but it's protecting the people. And remember when I said the second example with the role-based questionnaire, when you ask people and you collect those answers, then you're getting in an area where you get also the data of the people themselves, about their knowledge of certain systems. And that's why you have to assess each product which you're building with AI and according to some of the regulations. And some of them, most of them I saw right now are not critical, but there are some which are critical, which Matthias just said. And I think it's not good for producers like us, but it's good to protect the people from that. And I think it's a good regulation. I love regulations and compliance. It's my most topic.
Okay, not many people say that, but
maybe one thing we have to emphasize is, of course, it will. I mean, you already see it with some of the vendors of large AI models. They refuse to let's say put the model out in production in Europe because also when they train these large language model, has to adhere to specific regulations, and some of them just say, yeah, why bother? And then they release it, and it's not available in Europe. And this will, in my opinion, create in the short term even already, let's say, a competitive disadvantage for European companies if they cannot use the best models out there. So this is something that was a downside of the regulation, because besides the risk assessment, which I find is indeed very useful, like Peter mentioned, it's also putting, let's say, limits on those model developments and so on, which I don't think they were ever aware of when they designed the regulation, but because it's going so fast, this development, they are hitting some walls that they might have thought that we'd only hit in a few years now. And this will create problems, in my opinion, at some point, and that we are, let's say, with models of 2 years ago developing while other companies have the state of the art, which that's not really where we want to be, I guess.
Okay, thank you very much. Meanwhile, there was another question in the chat. I only see part of the name Nuno L. With a link to the sub-focus of the previous question, saying, I find it hard to see a small organization using an AI model. Wouldn't the current AI models be more useful for larger organizations?
It's not entirely true, because I mean, these AI models, I think Tim already mentioned that the big companies have the availabilities to indeed have their own hosting infrastructure, GPU, and so on. For a small company, this is out of the question. I fully understand it's a lot of money, but of course, there are a lot of these AI models which are already useful for a large number of tasks that are simply charged to you by a cloud vendor or everything else, which are used to be on a or are charged to you on a usage basis. So the more you use it, the more you pay. If you don't use it, don't pay. And so, I mean, even for small companies, of course, I mean, developing a proper AI tool or application costs some money. It's an investment. You need the talent to do it. You need the expertise to do it. So it's not a small investment for sure. But the model side for me is no limiting factor for small companies. There are models enough that are available at low cost even and incredibly fast that you can use to develop your application. So for me, that's not a factor. Of course, if you want to have full regulation and full control over everything that happens, you have to host it yourself, and that's for me only a possibility for larger companies. That's true, but it doesn't really stop you from doing applications with AI, because many are still possible with other options.
Yeah,
I think that's correct. I agree. It's using a model is not a matter of having technically skilled people. It's about finding the right tools. So there are already quite some commercial tools available on the market that use AI models under the hoods. There will be many more in the near future. And in the end, what you will also see, what I try to explain, is that development or doing some technical things with the model is also being democratized by the fact that you can simply ask another AI model to produce the code for you. So if you have people with even limited skills in your organization, technical skills, then I mean, even there you can probably make some decent steps in the near future. So I agree. It's I'm not really sure that it should limit small companies.
Yes, I would like to add to Tim's opinion, and it's surprisingly cost-effective even for small companies to use cloud-based AI services, and it's much more costly if you just don't do it because you think it will be too costly. Try it out. It's we have seen that it's we can use the word rather cheap. Sometimes using these AI models, and we developed one of our AI products with AI as well, programmed with AI, and it's amazing how fast you get feedback, how fast you can develop, and it's just mind-blowing. And you have to use that as a small company as well. And the small companies, in my experience now, have a really big, huge advantage to the large companies. They don't have the same amount of money, but they're much, much faster in decision taking, and you will be able to overcome much larger companies just because you'd have much faster decision taking. So use that in a small company, and the cost for the AI itself can be really neglected with the cloud services.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's an encouraging answer or puts the challenge on the table of the smaller organization. Nuno, I don't see you here on the screen, but if that's not sufficient, please raise your hand. And if you have additional questions, please do. I don't see other raised hands. Oh, yes, there, but I only see the initials, so there's a
There
certain...
are two. There is
Lucas and
Siever
Fabio.
and Lucas Pfeiffer.
Okay. Yes, Lucas Pfeiffer, please ask your question.
Okay. Hello, guys. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was very insightful. I have a question. I work in the medical device industry, so big topic for from a lot of regulations is regarding software validation. We have requirements from the MDR, FDA, ISO, etc., etc. So a lot of my customers, like their approach there or their challenges there are still around. How do we handle Excel macros, black box testing, a code review? And I think those are all things that will fully fall away, of course, with AI tools. So does one of you have experience, best practice, or what is your approach or your opinion on those requirements from the medical device industry or regulations?
Yeah, I have experience with the medical device industry, and you know from agile development, there has been a famous paper written by the Tier 45 paper by the AAMI. And what we have seen so far with AI, we can prove on adherence, on process adherence and process compliance to, for example, ISO 13485 or the FDA Chapter 11 requirements and so forth. And and this is possible. But for the test cases, black box and white box testing, we didn't see so far with AI. I don't know of any company who tried it, but for the processes and adherence, you can really already work on that very well. We have even runs on ISO 13485 with Audit Pro.
Okay. What was that document that you just mentioned? I'm sorry.
Tier 45, that's by the AAMI. I will write it in the chat.
Oh, yeah, that's great. Thank you.
There's even one of the co-authors, a Swiss guy, Dr. Jochen Jürgen. But it's very famous, that paper, Tier 45, AAMI. You have to buy it. It's an organization. It's $90, I think.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Do the two other colleagues want to reflect on Lucas's question?
Yeah, maybe more in general. I'm not an expert on medical regulations, so I think Peter's comment on that was already quite insightful. I think one of the points, I mean, I can attest to is a few projects that we did for customers where indeed the goal was to build a compliancy assistant. So that's an assistant that guides you through the entire compliancy documentation you have to provide, or kind of the requirements that have to be followed, and that advises you in you should look at this and this, and you can give it extra context. You can play around a lot with that. So it can also help you in devising or making that process faster instead of slowing it down.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Tim?
Not really anything to add, I would say. I'm also not really specialized in that matter. There are some things about regulation, of course, in our industry, but I don't have any specifics on that.
Okay, thank you very much. Then Fabio, my apologies that I skipped you, but I thought it was your earlier hand that was still up, but the floor is yours.
No worries. I mean, I understand that the time is now, and as I know, there are already so many solutions at the moment, and we are still in the early beginning of AI. And for me, it's very difficult to choose now solutions that are the good ones, because I assume in 1-2 years, there will be even more solutions and even better solutions than the one we have now. That would mean if I choose now solutions, these ones will not be the best ones in some years. So for me, it's a bit the question. So how can I be sure when I choose now tools or models and I integrate them into our company? This takes time. And then in 1-2 years, I see, oh, okay, there are better things now. What we do, okay, again, everything from scratch. We take new systems, we implement them. And when we do this all 1-2 years, that means change management for the people working here. I don't know if this at the end is efficiency, but I don't know what you think about that.
I think the answer on this is quite simple. You cannot make the right choice. It's a matter of taking the risk. Everything is evolving so quickly, but personally, in my opinion, the worst thing that you can do right now is wait and don't take any decision. So you really have to go fast, already benefit from the opportunities from a tool that you might maybe replace in a couple of years with another one. But I would say taking a decision on a tool, and of course after exploring a little bit, is always better than not taking any decision at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, because even, I mean, working with that one tool for 1 year, 2 years, before another tool becomes much more powerful, has learned you already a lot about how it works, what are the downsides, what can it do very well, etc. So for me, that experimentation part is essential, because if you now wait indeed 1 year, 2 years, and then you decide again what model to use, you have lost the learning of those 2 years, what could have been better. And of course, also when you do it in designing applications, what we try to do as much as possible, talking about the Gen AI part now, for example, is you have to abstract away as much as possible the model side. So that means that if there comes a new model in 2 weeks, that your application doesn't have to be rebuilt from scratch. You need to be very modular in that aspect and saying, okay, we build an application, we use an LLM in that application, but that LLM can be provided by Azure, can be provided by OpenAI, can be provided by our own system, and so on. So that you really abstract away the vendor or the model side itself. That's a more technical thing, but it's also an important one to take into account.
Totally agree. You have to learn fast, evolve on these learnings and improve on that. And if you wait, you don't learn anything.
Okay. But yeah, I see it still as a big challenge for companies to take always all people with them. We change. As you know, not everybody is happy about changes.
No, it's for sure, and it's
So,
something that we encounter a lot with customers that are more on the strategic level, saying, we have to build a strategy around what to do with AI, but how can we build a strategy if in 1 year we can throw it back into the bin because maybe new things has become possible that we didn't think of would become possible? It's for sure a challenge. So I don't want to downgrade the challenge that it is, for sure not. But it's like Peter said, you have to at least experiment already what is possible today, and then and live with the fact that indeed in a year it could be completely different. That's the only way. The only way, actually.
Yeah. Or perhaps I don't need the learnings because the AI is already so good in 2 years that it's included.
Also possible. Yeah. That's a good point.
No,
but I understand. Okay, thank you.
I don't see raised hands at this moment. And Lucas, you raised a question that has triggered another question in my own head for the Tuesday. Are the HR departments prepared for AI? Because we emphasize in many of the good practices it can save working hours and it can get things done more efficiently. But of course, and sometimes you hear a little voice saying in the debate, yes, but humans are important too. But for sure, AI is going to bring a challenge to the HR departments, how to deal with people in these new profiled companies. I would like to hear your reflections on that.
I would say from my point of view, not entirely. So they are, well, we try to explain them, of course, what is coming. But it takes some time for them to fully understand what the impact will be on the workforce. Of course, there are different ways to deal with this. It's not going to be just a matter of reducing people. It's always going to be first, okay, can we do tasks that bring more value? But yeah, this is a very difficult thing to tackle. It's not something, these kind of thinking exercises, they take time, they take a couple of months to go through, but we don't have a couple of months. So it's indeed a very, very challenging point at the moment.
Peter, Matthias,
Yes.
Do you have any input on that question?
Yeah, there are several aspects on HR. Of course, one of them is about train the people. I think there you can do a lot with AI, and it's amplifying what HR wants, that they have well-educated people working in their place with the right knowledge. That is important. I put a lot of hope into the selection of people from HR, from larger companies, that they can take much more into consideration what the people really are applying for, and that it's not like this word topping that they did in the past. So, for example, you need to have a certain degree in whatever, and then everybody which doesn't have that degree falls out of the system. And with HR, we may detect somebody who doesn't have that degree but would be a perfect fit. So I hope this will get better as well. So I rather see the advantages than disadvantages of using AI in the HR.
Okay.
Yeah.
Matthias, do you have something?
Yeah, I mean, a small thing, because I think the most important things I already said, but for me also the training part is essential, because you want to avoid that two people with the same function, one is using AI to the maximum and he says, well, I have to only do the same as the other person, so I'm much more efficient with AI, so I have to do less. You want to make sure that, I mean, everyone with the same kind of job description has the training, has the availability to learn how to best use AI within their job description, so that you can create at least an even playing field and reduce a little bit that risk. But for me, for the rest, I think everything was mentioned, especially the training part is most essential, I think.
Okay, thank you very much. Priska, did you have, well, it's a false question. I know you have many questions, but is there a question that you would like to add at this moment in the debate?
I'm very actually, I appreciate the fact of what you were saying about a small and medium company. At the same time, a large company has the opportunity to create their own strategy. What would be your advice to create a strategy for small and medium companies? So a digital strategy in that sense, or AI strategy?
Don't waste time until you have a strategy, I would say. Take a decision, do something, learn out of it, and get better at it as a small company. Because if you take 6 months time for building up a strategy, which most likely in a half a year will be overcome, because we are, as Tim said, we are growing so fast with our knowledge right now that you can't really build on a strategy. We have to get away from this long-term thinking and getting rather into short-term. So rather think of what shall we do right now, what would be good, what is possible, and then do something and learn on it. I think that's much better than creating a large session for strategy.
Yeah. I fully agree on the statement. Maybe one caveat I want to emphasize is the strategy on the AI part should be indeed start now, experiment, and so on. There is one thing, however, and that's a little bit, let's say less highlighted in today is the more classical ML, where you need your own data to train stuff. And for that, a strategy on your data part is essential, because you want to understand where's my data, in what silos do I want to centralize this, and so on. Because for many applications, the true competitive edge that you can get on top of your competitors is maybe within your own data. So training models within your own data that no one else has but you can really give you also an extra edge. And that only comes if you have high quality quantity data and so on, which is more a subject of the data strategy. But this is something that you have, that's not something for many companies that occurs that you can solve in 2 or 3 weeks. That's a more long-term goal. That should not stop you from what Peter said, to do everything on the short term as well, experimenting, building these more Gen AI applications that can go really fast and give you fast value. But keep that long-term thinking, especially on the data part, in the back of your head, because it can still give you, the classical ML is not that. It can still give you a high extra value if you have that your own data training these models.
So data is the gold of every company.
It's still the gold. It's become less essential because these LLMs, like Tim also mentioned, they can do already many tasks, not even trained on your own data or whatever. So you can do already many tasks that are kind of more generalized, and where you don't need that specific data from your own, within your own company. But that doesn't mean that it still not can be gold for many applications. So it opened up applications that were before not possible because you didn't have the data to train something like more generalistic. So it opened up more use cases, not less. And so, but the data still remains very important, and that's something that is not done in 2 weeks. And that's really something more on the long term.
maybe an addition. We are already doing an exercise to let's say see what the potential is of all the things that we can do right now with AI. And I have to say that about 50% of all the ideas that we have, they still have to be solved with classic machine learning. So there is, okay, it's a large part that we can solve in different ways, but still 50% requires machine learning. And for that, you really need to have a plan. You need to have the right talent. You need to have, it's sometimes also CapEx intensive. You need to do some kind of investments. So for that, you really need a plan. But indeed, if you really want to start doing something on the short term, go for the things that don't require any investment or just a small investment. And that's typically the whole Gen AI perimeter. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We have come to the end of our session of today. Thank you as much to the audience as to the speakers. I think we have many things to think about in the next weeks and months, for sure. We will see each other again on June 12th with the topic of the EU Green Deal and how we can reinforce the link between quality and sustainability. If you have any questions, please contact Prisca or myself if you have questions about the next event. In the chat, there will be, or on the link, there's 2 links for the Swiss participants and the Belgian participants to register for the next session on the Green Deal. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. See you soon. Bye.
Thanks.
A nice
Bye.
evening.
Thank you. Bye.